Doug Basham. Doug, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Hey, great, guys. Good to be with you again. And if I can channel my inner Fiore, my white ass just can't wait to discuss all the good things Donald Trump has done for this country.
I love it. So if you don't know what Doug is talking about, we talked about Michelle Fiore. She said white lives matter in her Clout County Republican convention. And she also said, my white ass lost a job because of some black ass that took the job from me. Among other things, and like I said, she said white lives matter. I was told by a few people that were there that you could hear a pin drop. Apparently, she's going to make a statement tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be an apology or not.
The Clark County chair of the Republican Party asked her to apologize, and she said no.
So, Doug, what do you make of that?
Well, it's typical Michelle. I mean, what we're seeing is what we know.
Do you think that she should be thrown out of office for those statements that she made?
I really, to this day, I cannot understand how she ever got into office in the first place. And when people like that do, it's just a further damning indictment of this country. And unfortunately now it goes all the way to the top in the White House.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to disagree with that. Let's talk about the White House, if I may. Joe Biden met with, as you know, Doug, met with the Floyd family. He met with them for a while. Dr. Jill Biden, of course, his wife, also is offering them, grief counseling and to help them through this difficult time. You hear a lot of people on the right that say, oh, he did it to pander. He did it for votes. Donald Trump picked up the phone and he had a 5-minute conversation with the family of George Floyd. And those in the family, at least 2 of them, said that they couldn't even really get a word in edgewise, that he interrupted them. What I see it as empathy versus no empathy. How do you see it?
Oh, exactly. And I've been harping on this for 4 years. Donald Trump, if you look up any definition of sociopath, he is the textbook definition. And the defining characteristic of a sociopath is an inability to feel and express normal human emotions, not the least of which is empathy. Donald Trump cares about one thing in this world, and that's Donald Trump. And the sooner people get that through their heads, it will explain everything he does.
Yeah, do you think that George W. Bush, you're obviously the only liberal talk host in Nevada, which I'm actually very surprised by considering how blue Nevada is politically right now. I'm shocked you don't have a bunch of competition, Doug. But do you think that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney putting us into the Iraqi war, the Afghanistan, under false pretenses was something that a sociopath would do?
Well, as far as that Iraq war, to this day, we don't know exactly how much George W. Bush knew, whether he knew he was lying us into this war or he didn't. Dick Cheney definitely did. I don't necessarily equate that with being a sociopath. I mean, there's a difference between neocons and sociopaths. Some people just like to start wars. That doesn't necessarily make them a sociopath. I do think it makes them war criminals, but again, there's a differentiation there.
You don't think that leveraging, event that brought the country together like 9/11, a horrible event, along with
why are we talking about that?
Well, I'm talking about sociopaths in the office, Brian. And I'm saying, how can you call Donald Trump a sociopath, but not call someone who literally brought us into a war, most likely under circumstances that were untrue, and lied to the public about it, and leverage a patriotism that was attached to 9/11 to actually make all these things happen? How do you not refer to that person or those two people as sociopaths as well?
Between doing something that is horribly wrong and sociopathy. I mean, if you go to any definition of a sociopath, every single checkbox applies to Donald Trump. They don't to George W. Bush, and they probably, as much as I hate to say it, they probably don't even apply to Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was just evil. That doesn't make him a sociopath.
Yeah, I think if you look up the definition of sociopath, I think you'll understand where Doug is coming from. The only reason why we're even talking about George W. Bush, I would imagine, is because there was a story that came out a few days ago. I believe was it either the Washington Post or the New York Times that reported that George W. Bush would not be supporting or voting for Donald Trump. Then one of George W. Bush's advisors came out and said it wasn't true. I actually think it is true. I think George W. Bush, based on all the things that Trump has said about the Bush family, which were disgusting, I don't blame anybody in the Bush family for not supporting Donald Trump. Nobody's come forward and said they will vote for Joe Biden, but let me ask you about Colin Powell. This is a man who is well respected, has been doing this for 4 decades. Colin Powell came out and not only said that he will not support Donald Trump as president, but actually said he will vote for Joe Biden. Your thoughts on that, Doug?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I saw that interview he did over the weekend, and I thought it was probably the best interview I'd seen Colin Powell do.
JD, do you think that...
And, of course, now he will join the list of all the other generals that have to be attacked by the party who has long claimed to be the party that supports the troops. But when it comes to the 5-time draft-dodging, bone-spurred coward Trump, oh, no, he knows more than the generals. We have to attack the generals. It's disgusting.
Doug, when was the last time that Colin Powell actually supported a Republican president in an election?
Who cares?
So I mean, it's not a giant surprise that he's going the route that he's going.
But
obviously.
JD, are you telling me that you agree with the typical? And I don't put you in the same category as a typical Trump supporter. And I have a feeling if I wasn't on, you wouldn't be as stringent as you are about it. So I don't put you in the same category. But do you agree with these people?
It's all variable based on the issue, Doug.
I'm sorry, Doug. What was the question?
Need to be attacked just because they speak the truth about Donald Trump?
Well, I hope that if he is attacking the generals like General Mattis, that there's a reason that is taking place. But do I think they should be attacked the second that they speak out against him? Of course not. No, that doesn't make much sense at all.
But how do you condone aberrant, childish behavior? Oh, he's a third-rate general. I mean, this is coming from the leader of this country. He is a petulant, immature child that tweets out insults of generals. How can people want 4 more years of this?
Well, I'll tell you what, Doug. A lot of people do want 4 years of this, and there is a silent majority. There is a silent majority building. Well, a lot of radical viewpoints have shown their faces in the last week. You see what's happening in Seattle right now. There is a 6-block autonomous zone that was taken over. A police precinct has been abandoned, and a member of the city council is backing it. You saw what happened in Minneapolis, talking about defunding the police. People are noticing there is a socialist, there is an underground socialist radical thought process that has seemed to infiltrate actual members. I'm not talking government, but I'm saying city council in major democratic cities. I think we're going to see this all over the place, and the country notices this. I mean, Doug, 80% of the country does not. They don't just want to defund the police. They want to either maintain the amount of money that is spent, or they want to add to it. So you have these people that are being pushed to make these radical decisions based on the amount of protesters or the social media presence or this digital angry mob stuff. And a lot of the country is just watching. They are watching, they are waiting, and they are keeping mind. They're being very mindful of what is taking place, and they are ready to make their votes in November. And it's going to be all pro-Trump at this point.
JD, I hate to tell you this, but the polls do not back up anything you're saying at all.
And I'm not buying the polls at this point, Doug.
Well,
that's
of
fine.
course not.
But the polls also didn't back Clinton against Trump. I mean, Clinton was. I think she was minus 2,500 a couple weeks before the election. Right now, Trump was like minus 130.
And the day of the election, they had Clinton up by 2%. That's exactly how much she won the election by. That just didn't account for the Electoral College.
Well,
so
of course.
All the stuff about denying the polls when they were actually spot on in 2016 is ridiculous.
I'm just saying these radical viewpoints right now are really turning people off in a big way. And you're not hearing about it, but it is taking place behind the scenes. And people like Candace Owens are picking up a lot of credibility on a national level right now. And groups like Black Lives Matter are not.
Again, the polls do not back up what you're saying. The American people support these protests. They support the Black Lives Matter. And basically what you're doing is repeating the propaganda from Trump's media, which has no basis in reality.
I'm not repeating any propaganda whatsoever. I mean, I'm literally looking at the situation, and I'm applying it as if I'm a member of if I'm a citizen of the United States, and I like having the police, and I have a job, at least I had a job before COVID, and I may be getting that job back. I don't want to defund the police. I know that if I work hard, and I make the correct decisions, I can be successful in this country. And the thought process that you cannot be successful in this country because of the color of your skin, to me, is an absolute joke right now. And I think that a lot of the country, and you'll see this, not so much on Twitter, but on TikTok, on Instagram, on a lot of different social platforms, there is a lot of underground, support for Donald Trump. But also, people are afraid. They're afraid to speak out publicly right now because they get attacked. They get referred to as racist. People try to take their jobs. So that is exactly how you build a silent majority. So whatever the polls say, that's fine. I'm indifferent to it. The polls said the exact same thing in 2016. So to me, I take it as a grain of salt, Doug.
What do you mean people try to take their jobs? What are you talking about?
I'm saying if you speak out against what's going on right now with Black Lives Matter, or if you support Donald Trump publicly, in a lot of cases you will get a lot of flack. Your life gets a lot more difficult on a digital platform. If you speak out for Donald Trump or against Black Lives Matter, or if you ask questions, and so people right now,
accusing a 75-year-old man of being part of a deep state underground Antifa plot. You should get flack if you support that person. This is the President of the United States. He has the whole world at his fingertips, the collective wisdom of 17 intelligence agencies. And where does he get his intel? From One American News. How anybody can support this is, I'm about to blow my stack here. I don't know.
Don't blow your stack, Doug. It's all right. This is just a friendly, a very friendly conversation on different sides of the political spectrum. It's fine.
And people want 4 more years of
Well,
this?
I believe that the Trump family is buying into One American News as we speak. I think they are trying to purchase a news network.
Which doesn't justify
that. That's okay?
And I'm not saying, well, it's okay. They can do that if they want to. That being said, does it justify doing what they're doing? No, of course not.
He should not be making deals concerning the media.
Again, if his family wants to purchase into whatever business they want to purchase, that's their business. You can't. Donald Trump's family is not prevented from making business decisions while he's president of the United States. No, that being said, did you watch the video of that 75-year-old man, Doug? Because I did.
I did too.
Yeah, I did. And do I think that he was purposefully pushed because they wanted to hurt him? No. I think he was definitely. It was a push. It wasn't a hard push at all. It looked like he kind of fell on his own as far as the blood coming from his head. I saw that. I saw that. I also saw him. I also saw him agitating police officers. I saw him take his phone and while he was videotaping police officers, he took it and put it down to a police officer's belt for whatever reason. I saw all those things.
So you're buying into the One American News?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying I watched the video.
White
Doug
man can't send an email, let alone scan police.
Let me just tell our listeners, Doug, and Doug, I know that you know this, but the person who actually started this rumor actually is one of the Kremlin. He actually writes for a Russian publication. I forgot even what it's. Yeah, Sputnik. Okay, that's where this thing started. They call him an alleged reporter. He's not even a legit member of the media. That's where it starts. And then that little piece of garbage Trump network called OAN are the ones that reported it. There is zero, and I mean zero, evidence to support the fact that this 75-year-old man is a member of excuse me, I'm not done. There is zero evidence to support the fact.
I'm sorry, what, Brian?
You just interrupted me. I'm not done yet.
I did not appreciate the way you just addressed me.
I don't appreciate
Don't do that again.
Okay, well, don't interrupt me. All right, you finish the segment. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
No, finish.
Okay, anyways, Doug, yeah, apparently there's no evidence for this in that regard. That being said, do I think that Donald Trump should have made that statement? Probably not. It wasn't the best decision, but I did watch the video, and he was not.
Excuse it like you have all the other.
No, I'm not. I'm not excusing. Again, Doug, I'm not. I'm not excusing what took place.
I mean, every time something like this happens, somebody says, "Well, I wouldn't have done that." But they've been saying that for 3.5 years of this constant, immature, childish, aberrant, heinous behavior from the guy at the top of the food chain. I mean, it's time to say enough.
See, Doug, and I look at it from a different perspective than you. I see what's taking place all over the country, and to me, you have a not discussing what they really think because they're afraid from being attacked from all different levels of social media.
Well, that might be a blessing because if a lot of these people came out and expressed what they actually felt, their poll numbers would go down even further. And I agree with Brian, what he said in the last half hour, the cowardice of Republicans. Oh, I didn't see it. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to condemn someone for basically accusing a 75-year-old man of being in this deep state underground plot with Antifa, and yet they have no guts, no honor, no decency, and no reason to be there.
Doug, what are your thoughts on defunding police? I brought up earlier in the show, or earlier in the segment, that I think, or that the polls are showing that 80% of Americans do not want to defund the police. In fact, they want to add to the police budget. Do you think that the police should be defunded or in some cases abolished? If you actually look at what's going on in Seattle right now, they have sent over a list of demands to the City Hall, because last night they stormed City Hall. They broke in last night, and they have demanded that the mayor defund the police. But then they've also added more demands to that, and part of those demands is abolishing the police. And another demand is adding more African American doctors to hospitals, and having those doctors actually be the ones that take care of African American patients. A lot of things are taking place like that. Do you think that those viewpoints are radical? And do you actually believe that defunding the police will be a good thing for the United States of America, and why?
Well, of course not. But to make a couple points here, no serious person wants to, quote unquote, defund the police. And no serious person believes any serious person wants to defund them. Defund the police, sadly, is an easy to remember bumper sticker buzz phrase, and it's one that can be manipulated. And, this is the fault of my side. They come up with a short phrase that doesn't explain the nuances and the caveats of it. My side has to see. We're not as good as coming up with the 3 or 4 word buzz phrases as the right is. We have to learn that when we come up with a buzz phrase, it has to explain. It has to come without a 10-minute explanation. So it should be reinventing the police, reforming police, reimagining police. Because when you say defund the police and you don't add the caveats that go with it, it gives Donald Trump and his side a talking point they can beat to death, when, again, no serious person wants to defund the police to the point where there's no police department. They want to redirect funds. They want to reimagine the scope of policing and law enforcement, which might not necessarily be a bad thing. But again, when it requires a 10-minute explanation, it's not a good buzz phrase. We got to do better.
And I think in some cases there is some major confusion. When I make posts about defunding the police, people think that, there's not going to be a police, and that's not the case, obviously. But when you say disband, when you say abolish, which is what is being discussed by Lisa Bender, who is the Minnesota City Council president, when she went on CNN two nights ago and discussed that, that's a whole different conversation. As far as police reform, I think that there should be a quota for minorities. I think that it should be harder to be a police officer. I think you should have to go through more training. There should be yearly mental evaluation tests. I think the pay should be higher. And there's a couple of different things that could work with reforming the police.
By the way, JD, if I can interrupt for half a second, I think that same criteria should apply to the president.
Okay. I mean, I don't disagree that the president shouldn't have a mental evaluation every single year. I mean, he does make some very, very huge decisions, and I think that's a reasonable thing as well.
Well, hey, I appreciate that.
So we just agreed on something. How does that feel?
Well, I was very glad when the Biden campaign came out and immediately said they disagreed with defunding. I mean, they've learned how dangerous these unnuanced buzz phrases can be. Not that it's going to stop, the other side from running with it, but, I just wish our side would do better in the buzz phrase department.
So we look at Joe Biden as a candidate, and I'm sure you saw him last week when he actually was in front of a teleprompter, and he repeated himself 3 times. You saw what he said on Charlemagne, on Charlemagne the God show, when he said, if you ain't black, if you vote for Donald Trump, then you ain't really black, and obviously that got a lot of backlash. Do you honestly believe that Joe Biden has the mental acuity? I know you think Donald Trump says some very crazy things and does some very crazy things, but do you think that Joe Biden has the mental acuity, despite the fact that he's almost 80 years old, to be the president of the United States, to stay the president of the United States for 4 years, and make the decisions that he has to make, as well as make the public appearances that will be expected of him?
I would say yes, but I would add this caveat to it. The thing that I feel comfortable with Joe Biden is the fact that, number one, he's not a sociopath. Number two, he's not an authoritarian dictator wannabe. And number 3, he will surround himself with good people and listen to them. He won't go with his gut every time like Trump does. So from that standpoint, absolutely, Joe Biden would be a better president than Donald Trump, 100-fold.
Now, how important is his vice president, whoever he chooses? Because I firmly believe that Joe Biden, based on what I've seen from him, just the fact that he doesn't really go on TV very much. When he speaks, he has some problems. He doesn't look very healthy. I really believe that if he does end up the president of the United States, that whoever is vice president will probably be president, her or himself, for at least 2 years. Do you agree with that? And would you say that his vice presidential choice is as important as anyone in recent history?
Oh, I agree with that last point completely, and I've been saying for a while, I wish he would announce it because I don't think ever before has the pick of a vice president been as important.
Yeah, I totally agree, Doug.
You know, I mean, it is what it is. Biden is getting up there in years, and, I mean, physically, I think he's as healthy as any 70 or 65-year-old. But Joe Biden is not the Joe Biden of 15 years ago as far as being sharp up top.
Right.
And yes, he has trouble every now and then, and he stumbles. But, I mean, good Lord, I would take a Joe Biden gaffe over a Donald Trump accusing a 75-year-old of being in cahoots with Antifa any day of the week. If Joe Biden became a tweeter, he would do it based on intelligence and on science and on facts, not OAN.
Yeah, well, I don't even want to get into OAN because that's not even a legitimate news network. Yeah, I know, but it's not a legitimate news network. Let's just call it for what it is.
I know it isn't, but that's who Trump is retweeting.
Well, I understand.
This is where the disconnect comes in. You agree with me that they're not I mean, even Mark Levin calls them a kook network.
Well, that's what they are. I also think Mark Levin is a kook.
But then how can you excuse or overlook the fact that the head guy in charge of this country is retweeting them?
Oh, you're not going to get an argument from me, Doug. I'll tell you that right now. I think it's a disgrace and it's disgusting. It's the same reason why I called out Donald Trump for saying that Joe Scarborough was a murderer. So, Doug, we only got about 45 seconds. Can you give us a little bit of a preview of what you're going to be talking about your show Saturday at 2 p.m.?
I have this amazing conversation, and I hope it doesn't get buried the rest of the week with other things Trump says or does. But it was a conversation with an excellent reporter, Dexter Filkins of The New Yorker. And he's won 1 Pulitzer, 2 Pokes, several overseas awards for his reporting on Beirut and Afghanistan and Iraq. And he was having a conversation on a cable network show. And all of a sudden, the conversation in the middle of nowhere went to a place I didn't expect it to, and yet something I've been harping on for 3.5 years. The fact that Donald Trump will not go quietly into the good night when he loses in November. And it was raised by generals.
I agree. I'm looking forward to hearing about that on Saturday, Doug. Well, you might want to listen to the next segment, Doug, because that protester that you were talking about, Martin Gugino, the 75-year-old who's still in the hospital, one of his best friends is going to be joining us next. So it should be interesting. Yeah, we're going to talk to her name is Vicki Rose. Doug, I always appreciate it.
In case it hasn't been said before, you guys got a great producer.
He does. Jason Stein does a very good job. Doug.
Thanks, Doug, and I appreciate your off-color texts that you send me during the week. Those make me laugh.
Off-color?
Doug is a great guy, and you do a great show, Doug. I'm a big fan of what you do, my friend, and I'm glad you're at KDWN. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, always my pleasure, guys. Stay safe.
Absolutely enjoyed it.
Also has the best hair that I've ever seen, too, by the way. He's got a lot more hair than I have, that's for sure.